Hey, this is Jacob Eben. Thanks for tuning in. If you've been around the channel for a while, or if you have read some of my newsletters because you're on my email list, you know that one thing which I believe is important is that in the future, I believe that we will need community, that in the future, when we have community, when we have people that have the Torah-centric view, or people who are observing the Torah, believe in one Elohim, and believe in focusing on his law and keeping other things subordinate to his law, that in that situation, when we have people together of like mind, that will be very useful and that will be very important. And right now, we don't really have that. Right now, there is no semblance of any ideal situation when it comes to community. And one thing that I want to do is I want to work toward that. I want to work toward it as a system rather than a goal. And instead of trying to make something happen which is just perfect, I've opted to go a more practical route in my view. And that is with an online meeting, with a regular Torah portion discussion done over Zoom. And I know a lot of people don't like Zoom, and I know that it's not ideal, but on the other hand, I think it's far better than nothing. I think that having this is going to be more useful, regardless of how many people show up the first time. I think that pursuing things this way, at least for now, would be more useful than doing nothing. And so what I want to do is on 4/9, according to the Gregorian calendar, so the 9th, the coming 9th, I want to have a Zoom meeting at 1 p.m. Central Time. And my intention is to make this a regular thing every Shabbat. And we'll be starting with the normal Torah portion on that day, which will be Leviticus 14 to the end of Leviticus 15. And I'm just choosing that because that's something that a lot of people already read. And it's not to say that the tradition is in any way important, but it's just to say that this is something that we could do. And my intention is that we would be meeting to discuss the Torah as a primary goal, that people would read it beforehand, that you would read it beforehand, and then whenever we get into the meeting, we can talk about whatever people found to be important or interesting, or whatever people thought would be worth discussing from the weekly reading, and we can talk about that in the meeting. And secondary to that, we could discuss other matters of the Torah after we are done, or just generally socialize or fellowship for a time. And I want to set a general frame for the group. I need to clear some things up. The emphasis for this is going to be on a Torah-centric view, because naturally that's the general view which I hold, and that's the type of community that I want to be developing. What that means is that the Torah is held as the primary scripture. And something I also need to clarify is that I am not messianic. And a lot of people have had the idea that I might be, but if you have seen my Hebrew Matthew video, you will have a much more clear understanding of where I stand on that and why. So for this meeting, instead of that, we are going to focus on the Torah and focus on serving Elohim through the lens of the Torah. And what I imagine, what I want to do, is something more like a book club or a Bible study type of meeting. My expectation is that people are going to read the Torah portion for that week prior to showing up, and then we can show up and, as mentioned, discuss it, and you're not required to say anything. You don't have to offer anything, and you can just show up to listen or can ask questions, and that's fine. And while on the one hand, I would like to keep this pretty informal, pretty open, and pretty loose, just to get together to talk about the Torah, there also is this clear need to have at least a framework around what we're doing. So there are a few expectations that I have for this. And the first one is to try to keep things peaceful. Whenever we're talking about issues of the Torah, there's plenty of opportunity for people to disagree about things, and that's okay. A person can disagree, and I'm okay with people voicing that and explaining why, or even pressing a point that they may believe that they have. But I want to try to keep emotions out of it, and I want to allow for us to move on after that is done. And for me, I know that I am not always perfect when it comes to this, even though my intent is to not disrespect anyone at any time. But if a person seems to be there in the meeting just to tell people that they're wrong, then that is not okay. So I want to try to keep things as peaceful as possible while still allowing for people to express different views on things. The second expectation I've already talked about a bit, that it's going to be a Torah-centric paradigm. It's okay to bring up possibly relevant passages from the latter parts of the Tanakh or even the New Testament, but the frame needs to be that the Torah defines the law, not any later work. And the Torah needs to remain the focal point without excessively dwelling on these other works. So it's coming at it from a Torah-centric paradigm. The third expectation is that we would only be recognizing one God, one Elohim, the Elohim of Israel. So if a person holds a messianic figure as if they were a god, even if he is seen as being the same God, then that is not to be recognized at the meeting. So we are only recognizing one God. The fourth expectation I have for this is that there will be no debating over the New Testament or over messianic issues. Messianics are welcome to attend if they hold a Torah-centric view and if they hold a monotheistic view. For example, an Ebionite view or similar may be able to fit within that frame. Assuming that the Torah is seen as the primary document, assuming that the Torah is seen as setting the standard essentially for what we are supposed to do, and that the Torah defines what the Torah is, not any other book, not the Gospel of Matthew or anything, that the Torah is defining what the commands are. It's also okay to ask why we may hold non-messianic views or interpretations of passages if that is relevant. However, there will be no attempt at convincing people to either accept a messianic view or accept the Gospels or try to convince people that Paul supposedly taught the Torah. The line will be drawn there. And if you want to ask me about that stuff privately, you can email me at torahcentric@protonmail.com. But I've had too many past meetings that I've gone to which just turned into debating about Paul, and I want this to be different from that. So I would like to see no debating over New Testament or Messianic issues. And the last expectation which I have for this is that it doesn't matter how many people show up. That there is no success or failure other than just having it. If it's 2 people, then there will be 2 people, and that's fine. Or if it's 10 people, that's fine. For now, my intention is to approach this as a system and to approach it as a routine. And while there will probably be some adjustments along the way, I would like to keep this going and keep it as something which is a regular event every Shabbat. And so the general expectation would be that we're just going to be open to how it goes. And we're just going to be open to developing it into what we want. So those are my general expectations for it. That's my general plan. If you're interested in it, make sure that you email me. Don't just comment here. You need to email me at torahcentric@protonmail.com because I'll need to send you the Zoom link. And if you haven't ever used Zoom before, you may want to go download it and sort that out, figure out how to adjust your microphone or your camera as necessary. And you don't need to use your camera, that's fine. But you'll probably want to get all that sorted out before the time actually comes. And once again, the planned time is at 1 p.m. Central Time on the 9th. And it'll be Leviticus 14 to the end of Leviticus 15. Feel free to read that before you show up. So if you're interested, hit me up, or if you might be interested in the future, maybe not in this one, but maybe in a future one, make sure you go ahead and email me and let me know so you can be on the email list so I can send you the information, the link, as the time comes. Thanks for watching. Guard the commands, stay focused, and be tenacious.